So I started my journey off when I was 13, and I had been suicidal for about a year prior to that and depressed for as long as I could remember. And the first time I found the right level of care, it was by luck, honestly. At 13 years old, I was talking to a bunch of strangers on the internet about my plan to attempt suicide. And at the time, they were the only people who I'd felt were taking my thoughts and my feelings and mental health seriously. And one of the strangers who I'd communicated with, who is only a year older than me and over 1,000 miles away, reached out to the police and they were able to locate me and get me a psych eval. In that psych evaluation, I was finally asked questions about suicidal ideation and these things that had never been brought up to me before. And was able to finally have a platform where I could talk about it. My first serious treatment program was an adolescent crisis unit when I was barely 13 years old. And I was exposed to a whole world of language and information and resources that I hadn't been exposed to prior to being inpatient. And I was exposed to other people my age who were dealing with similar issues, so I didn't feel as alone in what I was going through. Because I was so young and expressing such persistent thoughts of suicide, I was pushing for the people who were working with me to keep me into the hospital until I found placement. And I had been struggling for so long, I knew that at that point, sending me home would have taken me back huge steps in the treatment that I had received so far. Not everyone wanted to take me at face value because I was so young and they didn't want to keep me at such high a level of care, but I knew that I had needed it. So I learned what I needed to say to stay there, and stayed there so I wasn't released prematurely. Eventually, I ended up in a residential facility that I stayed in for about 10 months, where I was in groups regularly. I attended a therapeutic school and a therapeutic after-school program. And after completing these programs, I still struggled with suicidal thoughts. I was really young completing them. And I had a number of suicide attempts after that eventually ended me back up in crisis units only a few years later. But at that point, I knew what work had to be put in, and I was ready to do that work again to get myself back to a place where I wasn't suicidal and I wasn't attempting and I wasn't relapsing. And while I had my setbacks and they were hard, they were nothing compared to the route my mental health would have taken before I received that help.